Hello everyone. Today we're doing some book decluttering or some book unhauling. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Kat. I make videos about books, writing and other random things living rent-free in my neurodivergent brain. I recently moved into my home office. Before I was working in this room, which is in the annex of the house, but we finally finished painting my room, which I'm very excited about. So my desk moved there. I still have so much work to do on that room, but now I'm kind of working from there. And the plan for this room is to turn it into some kind of workshop where my husband and I can do some of our hobbies. So mainly my husband does a lot of miniature paintings for like D&D figurines and things like that. I also want to do a little bit more of that. I tried it recently and it was a lot of fun, so I would like to spend some time doing that, and it's also something that I can share with him. I would like to have a table where I can do my puzzles, which is not the kitchen table, where I have my miniature as well, that kind of miniature one shop which I've been building for months. So it's been laid out on the kitchen table for, again, a month, so I'm very excited to have a space where I can move that out of the kitchen. But in order to do that, I need to move some things around, the main one being the two big bookshelves here, and so I need to relocate those books. A good chunk of them are going to move into this room behind me. It's a tiny room, but it has bookshelves built in, so I'm going to move a good chunk of those books there and some in my office. That being said, I also want to look into the books I own at the moment and see if there's any ones that I can part way with. As I mentioned back in June, so a while ago, I wanted to curate my bookshelves and also kind of reduce the amount of books I'm buying. So my plan is to go through all those books and decide if I want to keep them or if I want to donate them or try to sell them. I'm not sure it's gonna be that many that I part way with, but it's still worth having a go. It feels a bit overwhelming, so I'm probably gonna do one shelf at a time over several days. So I'm gonna get started now and pick one shelf and see if there's anything that I no longer want to keep. Just found this in all my books. It's a perfume card, so now my books are smelling like peach. So this is what we are working with. This is my keep pile, this is my maybe pile. I don't think I'm gonna keep those, but I still want to give them a bit more of a chance. So I need to spend a bit more time with them before I'm feeling confident parting ways. And the only one I'm not keeping is this one. It was also a bit of an outlier in this shelf because this was my feminist shelf. I'm a bit sad about it because I really wanted to like it. I have a video with a review about it. The reason I picked it up is because I'm gonna attend a writers festival in August and I have a few workshops booked with this author. I think it would be nice to have it signed by the author, but honestly, I don't think that's enough justification for me to keep it. So I'm gonna let it go. Okay, so my maybe pile or temporary pile, I started reading this and it really felt like a translation. I didn't like the style very much. Overall, I was a bit bored with this book. So this is a book about women who walk. This is like a series of famous women across history who took on walking and hiking, and I really loved the idea and the concept behind it. So I might still read the chapter about Simone de Beauvoir, which was the main reason I bought it in the first place. And after that, just let it go. Next one is a book about kind of the figure of the witch. but I have another one from a famous French author, which I've heard so many good things about, and I've heard other books from this author. So I know she's very serious and she does quite interesting research and have interesting takes on those kind of topics. So I would rather read that one, but I love a feminist book, so I might still try to read a few pages, see if that grabs my attention and if it's worth for me to try to read both of those books on a similar topic. This one is how to talk back to annoying men, basically, when you're kind of catcalled in the street and stuff like that. It sounds like a fun book, and it's definitely something I would have loved to have when I was in my teens, sadly, and then 20s. Nowadays, to be honest, maybe it's also linked to the place where I live, but I'm not being catcalled barely at all anymore, so I don't really feel like I need it that much. I feel like there might still be good tips or interesting conversation in there, so I still want to have a bit more of a look into it before I decide if I want to let it go. And then this one is about a number of French intellectual women talking about one feminist book that changed their lives. It sounds like something that I should love, but I don't know, it looks a little bit superficial by the kind of layout of it, and I have so many other feminist books that I would rather read before this one, so I'm not sure I would realistically get to it. So I might again like read a few pages to see if I'm ready to let it go. That was my maybe pal, and then I will try to go quickly through the books that I'm keeping. So Bad Feminist by Roxane Gay. I read 90% of it, never actually finished it, and there are some essays that I would like to revisit, so I'm keeping this. Homeward Bound is a book that I read a few years ago. Really like the idea. It's about why some women are kind of retreating to the home and being like stay-at-home moms or wanting to take care of the homestead full-time. I thought it was a very interesting book. Basically, I think the main point the book is making is that governments are failing us more and more, and so that's why people feel the need to taking matters in their own hands, so kind of learning how to tend a garden, make their own bread, homeschool children, all those kind of things. And so that's kind of what would be fueling that tendency, but it's also interesting that it's mainly women doing it. So yeah, I really enjoyed that book. This one I have not read yet, but I'm still very keen to do so, so I'm keeping it. Then The Handmaid's Tales, the classic, I'm keeping it. The Mothers by Brit Bennett. I have not read this yet, but heard so many good things about this author, this book, and even more about her other book, The Vanishing Half, so I still want to read this. I'm keeping it. This one is about feminism washing, so basically how companies are using feminism to get, I don't know, likability points. It's the same idea of like greenwashing, but with feminism. Have not read yet, but very, very keen to do so. It sounds very interesting. Motherhood. I'm very interested about the topic of motherhood from a critical angle and the pressure that society puts on women to have children. I am child-free, so this is a topic that I do care quite a bit about, and I'm interested to read from both the child-free angle and from the motherhood angle when there is an interesting conversation about it. So still have to read this, but very keen to do so. This is a French novel about a community of women living together and then pulling together to protect one of their own when one of the women in the group is accused of murder. I still have to read this, but I've heard many good things about it. This one is also a French novel. It's about almost like the postpartum after giving birth and the difficult relationship of the main character with her body after giving birth. It was a bit strange and weird, but I'm interested in the topic, so I might reread this in future and see if I like it more. This is the famous French author I talked about who writes feminist books and who is a journalist and does very thorough and interesting research. This book is about kind of the pressure on women to look beautiful. So I've read this, really enjoyed it. I'm keeping it. This book I talked about before. This is a memoir from Mireia Mayor, who is the first woman to be National Geographic host, and she's led some really exciting expeditions. She's such a badass. I talked about this book in previous videos, really love it, so I'm keeping it. This one is about the French language from a feminist point of view. So basically in French you have gendered words and gendered conjugations. Basically the most used principle is that when you have even like a group of women and one man in that group, then you will conjugate everything to the masculine, which feels a bit infuriating. And so this book talks about patriarchy overtake of the French language. I haven't read it, but I kind of know a bit of the content and I think it's going to be very interesting. This one is a non-fiction about the choice not to be a mother, which I really liked, so I'm going to keep it. This is about feminist self-defense. So it sounds like an interesting concept and idea, so I still want to read this. This one is about feminism in pop culture. So if it's talking about Buffy the Vampire Slayer, then I want to read it. This one is a classic in sociology. This is the, what would be the title in English? Masculine domination. So it's about the patriarchy. It's from Pierre Bourdieu, which is, I think, one of the top 10 sociologists of the century or something like that. He's a very famous scholar, and this is a classic book. It's tiny as well, so I'm curious to read it. Then another one on feminism and the French language. This one is from Elizabeth Gilbert, who is the author of Eat, Pray, Love. And this is her book about marriage, which I read before getting married and really enjoyed. I thought it had a lot of interesting ideas in it, but I don't remember much about it, so I would want to do a reread at some point. Then this one is a French non-fiction book about the choice to get voluntary sterilization. It's a very controversial topic, but a very interesting one, and it talks about kind of the history of sterilization and how it would use for a long time to very dreadful aims, but also kind of the struggle for women in France who want to use that contraception method. Another one on a similar topic. This one is not specifically about sterilization, but it's about the choice to not have children and kind of the mental load that's put on women to reproduce and have children. This one is a kind of graphic non-fiction book. It's a study or research about endometriosis in France. It was very interesting. I quite enjoyed this. This one is about how finally companies and the political world are starting to consider the inequalities between men and women and starting to do things about it. I haven't read it yet, but the topic sounds super interesting. Another one about endometriosis and how France is really behind compared to other countries on this topic. This one is the patriarchy of objects. So how the design of everyday objects has been thought from kind of a male perspective and might be not adapted to women users. This is also kind of a modern classic at this point. This is We Are All Feminists by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. It's a tiny book, but what I really like about it is that it's kind of a proof version. It's from my time working in publishing, and so there were like a lot of books scattered all over the building that you could pick up, and so this one are like the proof that you get before the book is actually released. So it feels very much like a collector, so I'm keeping this. This is a very cute comic book about not wanting to be a mother, which I really enjoyed. I thought it was very interesting. This is more like a textbook about gender studies that I started reading, but I would like to go back to. I think I just read like the intro in the first chapter, so still kind of new to me, but like a reference books that I want to read. And then finally the book I was talking about earlier about witches from that French journalist who has very interesting books, so that I'm keeping. So that was all the books on my first shelf, and yeah, I mean, I have 1 to give away and then 4 maybe. So I think for 1 shelf, I'm not doing too bad. Let me know if you like that kind of videos, in which case I might make a whole series about this. Otherwise I might just like smoosh everything in 1 video or just drop the project completely if you're not interested. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.